In the land of open source where the code is free.
Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at something that I think is really cool. We're going to be looking at how to contribute to the Linux kernel. We're going to be doing that through the lens of someone who has successfully contributed to the Linux kernel. And she's an outreachy intern. Her name is Dorcas Litunya. And she has generously shared a transcript from a Blackboard workshop that she led where she walks other people through the process.
Oh, yeah, Blackboard. It's an amazing YouTube channel. It has just tons of really good content, really good workshops, tech talks, all that good stuff. And in this particular workshop, Dorcas lays out a roadmap for anyone that has the dream of being a kernel contributor.
So this isn't just for like seasoned coders.
Not at all. Dorcas makes it very clear that anyone with a passion for tech can get involved. However, she does recommend having a few things in place before diving in.
So what are those essentials?
So a working Linux system is a must-have, obviously, and a decent internet connection to handle those code bases. And then there's the coding language of the kernel, C. So a solid grasp of C programming is key. And of course, you'll need to be comfortable using Git for version control and a good text editor for, well, editing all that code.
I imagine Dorcas provides some guidance on this.
Absolutely. She points everyone to the Linux kernel newbies page, which has detailed instructions on setting up your development environment. She even touches on specific tools like Mott. So think of Mott as your communication hub for the kernel community. It's an email client, specifically designed for sending patches and engaging in discussions with other developers.
So email is still the main form of communication in kernel development.
It might seem a little bit old school, but email provides a really clear and organized record of all the discussions and code revisions and decisions, which is essential for a project as massive and complex as the Linux kernel.
That makes sense. So once we have our tools ready, what's the next step?
Well, before you even write a single line of code, Dorcas emphasizes the importance of understanding the kernel development workflow. And it all starts with identifying problems or areas for improvement.
Okay, so you mean putting on your detective hat, digging into the kernel's code base and finding those pesky bugs.
Yeah.
Or, maybe dreaming up some new features.
Exactly. It's like solving a puzzle, piecing together clues and figuring out how to make the kernel even better. But Dorcas reassures us that you don't have to be a coding wizard to contribute. Even spotting a typo in the documentation can be valuable.
So there's really a place for everyone, regardless of their experience level.
Absolutely. And she provides some great tips for beginners. For example, there's a tool called CheckPatch. It can help identify simple fixes like formatting inconsistencies or potential bugs.
So like a code linter for the kernel.
You got it. It just helps ensure that your code meets the kernel's high standards. Dorcas also suggests reviewing existing issues and bug reports. It's a great way to get a feel for the kinds of challenges kernel developers face.
Okay, so we've identified a problem. Now how do we actually go about fixing it?
That's where we get to the heart of kernel development. Creating a patch.
A patch.
Yes.
Is that like a digital Band-Aid for the code?
It's more like submitting a blueprint for improvement. A patch is a set of code changes that address a specific problem or add a new feature. But crafting a patch isn't just about writing code. It needs to be presented in a way that makes it easy for others to understand and review.
Right, because kernel development is a collaborative effort.
Exactly. And Dorcas points out that a key part of this is writing clear and concise commit messages. Think of them as mini explanations that accompany each patch.
So no rambling or technical jargon allowed?
Definitely. The kernel community thrives on open communication and meticulous documentation. Your patch needs to not only solve a problem, but also explain itself eloquently to those who will review it, and potentially merge it into the mainline kernel.
Got it. Clear code, clear explanations. But the kernel is huge. How do you even know where to start looking for problems? Or where your skills might fit best?
That's where finding your niche comes in. Dorcas highlights several key areas where contributions are welcome. Device drivers, file systems, networking, security.
Wow, so many options.
Exactly. And she stresses the value of starting small. Maybe you tackle a simple bug fix in a driver you're familiar with, or contribute to improving the documentation in an area that interests you.
You don't have to jump into the deep end right away.
Exactly. And if you have an idea for a bigger change, Dorcas recommends creating what's called an RFC patch.
RFC?
Yeah. It stands for Request for Comments. It's basically a way to propose a change and gather feedback from the community before you dive into a full-blown implementation.
So it's like testing the waters. Getting valuable input before you go all in.
Precisely. It's a collaborative approach that helps ensure that your changes align with the kernel's overall design philosophy. And speaking of design, let's move on to the actual process of creating a patch. Dorcas takes us through a live coding demo, where she tackles a menu control in something called the Vivid Test Driver.
Wait, Vivid Test Driver?
Yeah.
What's that all about?
It's basically a virtual playground for kernel developers. Vivid emulates hardware, so you can experiment and test your code without needing the actual physical device.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So Dorcas' demo shows us how to modify this virtual hardware.
So we're getting like a front row seat
Yeah.
to an actual kernel contribution in action.
Yes, we are. And as she's coding, she emphasizes a point we touched on earlier, the importance of a clear and well-structured commit message. Remember, it's like a mini narrative that explains your changes.
Right, like setting the scene and outlining the plot.
Exactly. She starts with a concise title that summarizes the change, followed by a more detailed explanation of what was modified and why.
And no rambling allowed.
Absolutely. A well-written commit message shows that you respect the reviewer's time and helps them understand your changes quickly. But sometimes a single commit isn't enough to capture a more complex change.
So what happens when you need to make a bunch of related changes?
That's where patch sets come in. Think of it like chapters in a book. Each commit addresses a specific part of a larger change, and the patch set bundles those commits together.
Ah, so instead of one massive change, you break it down into smaller, more manageable chunks.
Exactly.
But how do you tie it all together?
That's where the cover letter comes in. It's basically patch 0, an introduction to the entire patch set.
So it's like the executive summary, providing context and a roadmap for the reviewers.
Precisely. The cover letter explains the motivation behind the changes. Any dependencies, potential implications. It's all about presenting your work in a clear and organized way. Dorcas even mentions a document on kernel.org called Patch Philosophy, which is a great resource for writing effective cover letters.
Okay, so we've got our patch set all polished, ready to go. How do we actually get it to the maintainers?
Dorcas reveals the magic command, git send email.
Yo, email, seriously.
It might seem a bit old-fashioned, but email is still the gold standard for kernel development. It provides a clear and permanent record of all the discussions and decisions, which is crucial for a project of this magnitude.
Makes sense. But I imagine those mailing lists can get pretty crowded. How do you make sure that your patch gets to the right people?
Well, there's a handy script called CCCMD that automatically adds relevant individuals to the email's CC list.
Ah, so it's like having a personal assistant who knows exactly who needs to be kept in the loop.
It is. But before hitting that send button, Dorcas reminds us of one crucial step: proofreading.
Of course.
Got to make sure there are no typos or embarrassing errors in those commit messages and cover letters.
Exactly.
A well-crafted and error-free patch shows that you take pride in your work and respect the community's time. It's like polishing a gem before presenting it to the world.
Speaking of journeys, let's talk about Dorcas's path to becoming a kernel contributor. She mentioned something called the Outreachy internship program.
Outreachy is a phenomenal program that aims to bring more people from underrepresented groups into the world of open source software development. Dorcas was an Outreachy intern herself, and it's clear that the program played a big role in her journey.
That's so inspiring. It shows that the open source community is committed to inclusivity and making tech accessible to everyone.
Absolutely. And Dorcas's contributions are a testament to the program's success.
So what exactly did Dorcas contribute? We know she worked on the Vivid test driver, but what did that involve?
Well, it turns out that the software emulation in Vivid wasn't perfectly mimicking the behavior of the real hardware. So Dorcas's work involved improving that emulation, making it more accurate.
So like fine-tuning a musical instrument to ensure it produces the perfect pitch.
Perfect analogy. Thanks to Dorcas's work, software running on Vivid now behaves almost exactly as if it were interacting with the actual hardware.
And that level of accuracy is crucial for developers who rely on Vivid to test their code.
Absolutely. It's like having a virtual lab where they can experiment and make sure their software works flawlessly before releasing it to the world.
It sounds like, even though Dorcas started as an intern, she made some pretty significant contributions.
She did, and she proudly shares a link in the transcript where you can actually see her patch in the mainline kernel tree.
Wow, that's amazing.
It is, and it highlights a crucial point that Dorcas emphasizes throughout the workshop. You don't have to be a coding superstar to make a meaningful contribution to the Linux kernel. Every improvement, no matter how small, makes a difference.
It's like the butterfly effect, right? One small change can ripple out and have a big impact on the entire system.
Exactly, and it's that collaborative spirit, that willingness to share knowledge and work together that makes the open source community so special.
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm feeling pretty inspired right now. Ready to wrap things up, share some final thoughts with our listener.
I am too. Dorcas's journey is a great example of how anyone, with the right resources and a bit of determination, can contribute to something as massive as the Linux kernel.
It's empowering, isn't it? It really demystifies the whole process, makes it seem achievable even for someone just starting out.
Definitely. So for our listener who might be feeling inspired to dive into kernel development themselves, let's recap some of the key takeaways from this deep dive.
First and foremost, remember that you don't need to be a coding guru to contribute. Even small improvements, like fixing a typo in the documentation or identifying a potential bug, are valuable.
Right. And Dorcas provided some great resources to help get started, like the Linux kernel newbies page for setting up your development environment.
She also walked us through the kernel development workflow, emphasizing the importance of clear communication, thorough documentation, and of course, crafting those well-structured patches and patch sets.
And let's not forget the crucial role of those automated test bots, diligently working behind the scenes to catch any regressions and keep the kernel stable. They're like the unsung heroes of kernel development. They really are. But beyond the technical aspects, Dorcas's story reminds us that the open source community is welcoming and supportive, especially for newcomers.
Exactly. And there are initiatives like the Outreachy internship program, specifically designed to help people from underrepresented backgrounds get involved.
So if this deep dive has sparked your curiosity, I encourage you to explore further. Check out Dorcas's patch using the link provided in the transcript. Browse the Blackboard YouTube channel for more insightful workshops, or even consider trying your hand at submitting a small patch yourself.
Who knows? Maybe you'll discover a passion for tinkering with the very heart of the technology that powers our world.
And perhaps someday, we'll be featuring your kernel contribution story on a future deep dive.
That's a great thought. And on that note, I'll leave you, our listener, with this. In the vast world of open source, every contribution counts. It's a space where anyone, regardless of their background or experience level, can leave their mark on the technology that shapes our lives. So go forth, explore, and maybe, just maybe, you'll find yourself contributing to the next groundbreaking innovation. Until next time, happy diving.